Alright mates, how's it going? In today's video, I'm covering Fury of the Sunwell from Chronicle Volume 3. So let's get... Despite the Horde managing to stop the war with the Amani before it started, Quel'Thalas still didn't end up doing so well. Most of its defenders were still in Outland, so when Kael'thas and his forces marched on the Blood Elf Kingdom, there wasn't really anything to stop them. Kil'jaeden had ordered the Fallen Prince to capture the Naru Muru, as well as Anvina Teague, the avatar of the Sunwell's energy. Kael'thas then performed a ritual using energy from the mana cells he'd collected from the Netherstorm. He also leached energy from both Muru and Anvina and focused it all on the ruined Sunwell. And it exploded. The fount sparked to life for the first time since the Third War, which is great. But he then began weaving the Sunwell's power into a gateway for Kil'jaeden to reach Azeroth, which is not great. Some Blood Elves managed to escape Quel'Thalas and fled to Outland to warn the Horde what was happening. One of these elves was the Blood Knight Lady Liadrin. She met with Adal in Shattrath City, renounced her allegiance to Kael'thas, and swore to dedicate herself to defeating the Legion. And Adal was like, "Welcome aboard, Babs." He'd forged a new order to stand against the Prince, called the Shattered Sun Offensive. This order consisted of both Draenei from the Aldor and Blood Elves from the Scryers, working together, even though they hated each other. The Shattered Sun Offensive then launched an offensive on the Isle of Kel'Danas. A fierce battle took place against the Legion forces in the area, and although constantly besieged by demons, Liadrin and her allies cleared a path. Kael'thas' spell work was disrupted long enough for more help to arrive. As members of both the Horde and the Alliance arrived on the Isle, Lady Liadrin gave out some orders. Horde champions, you hunt down Kael'thas in the Magisters Terrace, but be warned, he's more powerful since the last time you faced him. And Alliance, as much as I hate to say this, your job is to infiltrate the Sunwell Plateau and do whatever it takes to protect the Sunwell itself. So first, Magisters Terrace. Horde champions entered the 5-man instance and fought their way through. They had a little bit of help from Kalek, the avatar of the blue dragon Kaligos. Eventually, they reached the Grand Magister's Asylum and faced Kael'thas Sunstrider himself, again. To be honest, a lot of his abilities were the same as during the Tempest Keep fight, mostly fire-based stuff, but let's do a recap of the encounter anyway, because I'm pretty sure a large chunk of you guys are Horde players. In Phase 1, the champions remained within melee range, so Kael'thas stuck to mostly melee attacks. But he did throw the odd fireball here and there, just so the champions felt like he was at least trying. However, 10 seconds into Phase 1, Kael'thas summoned a Phoenix, and would continue to summon a new Phoenix every minute after until Phase 1 was over. The champions decided that they didn't fancy getting absolutely overwhelmed by Phoenixes, so they tasked the ranged DPS with killing them as soon as possible. However, they needed to kite the little shits away from the tank, because they exploded when they died, dealing a buttload of damage to everyone otherwise. Also, similar to the Tempest Keep fight, when a Phoenix died, it dropped an egg, and that needed to be destroyed quickly as well, otherwise it would hatch into yet another bloody Phoenix. Once Kael'thas was down to 50% health, Phase 2 started. At this point, Kel switched to his Gravity and Arcane type abilities. Gravity Lapse threw the entire party into the air, and everything started feeling a little bit Dragon Ball-y. Kael then started channeling Arcane energy onto the entire group, which dealt a fair bit of damage over time. And he also summoned 3 Arcane Orbs, which hit anyone within melee range pretty hard. The champions decided to float around and avoid the orbs. The priority here was to just stay alive. There was no need to tank or get too close to Kael'thas. Ranged could still hit him if they wanted, but it didn't really matter too much, because Phase 2 only lasted about 30 seconds anyway. In Phase 3, Kael'thas basically just got a bit tired, and Gravity Lapse stopped, and the champions just went all out. In fact, Kael was so tired, he was now taking 50% more damage. I hate it when I'm so tired I take 50% more damage. But Phase 3 only lasted about 10 seconds because Phase 2 was repeated, and that's basically how the rest of the fight went until Kael'thas died. And this time, the Horde made sure he was real dead. Meanwhile, the Alliance infiltrated the Sunwell Plateau. They fought their way to the Sunwell, having to face a whole bunch of trash mobs and bosses, including Kaligos, who'd managed to get himself possessed by a Nathrazim called Sathravar the Corruptor. They also faced Muru as well, who'd been twisted into a Dark Naru, or Void God, thanks to basically being drained of its essence. You'd think that it was Kael'thas that had twisted Muru, but it was actually kinda just the Blood Elves in general, and Lady Liadrin and her Blood Knights, as they'd constantly drained the light from the poor bastard. When the Alliance champions arrived at the Sunwell itself, they immediately began trying to stop Kil'jaeden from entering their world. And that's basically what Phase 1 is. 3 Eridar jerks called Hands of the Deceiver were trying to channel Anvina's power into the Sunwell. The champions decided to try and keep the 3 of them separated as much as possible. This was due to their abilities that would debuff and damage anyone within 30 yards. Although the Hands of the Deceiver were killed, it was too late. Phase 2 started, and the champions watched in horror as Kil'jaeden emerged from the portal. He used a number of abilities in this phase, which, to be honest, there wasn't really much the champions could do about, except summon Shield Orb. These orbs would constantly shoot shadow bolts at the raid and deal a fair bit of damage, so ranged DPS made sure to take them out as soon as possible. When Kil'jaeden was down to 85% health, Phase 3 started, and this fight definitely gets progressively harder. The Deceiver immediately cast Sinister Reflection. This spawned 4 clones of random members of the group. Not only did these clones have the same abilities as whoever they were clones of, but they also did a considerable amount more damage, which just made the champions feel really insecure about themselves. He also cast Shadow Spike on a random target, which, upon reaching the target, would explode and cause a pretty big amount of splash damage to anyone within 8 yards. However, Kael'thas, who was no longer possessed, joined the fight in Phase 3. After Kil'jaeden would cast a Shadow Spike, the Blue Dragon would empower one of 4 orbs of the Blue Dragonflight. Clicking this would transform a champion into a Blue Dragon, with a number of different abilities for 2 minutes. Each orb could only be clicked once, but luckily, the champions knew what they were doing. Whoever transformed into a Blue Dragon needed to make sure they cast Shield of the Blue shortly after Kil'jaeden started casting Darkness of 1,000 Souls. Otherwise, they'd all die. Once Kil'jaeden was down to 55% health, it was time for Phase 4. Basically the same as Phase 3, but Kil'jaeden now cast Armageddon as well as everything else, because having to worry about 9 different abilities at once is fun apparently. The champions desperately continued to fight until Kil'jaeden was down to 25% health, at which point Phase 5 started. And again, it was similar to Phases 3 and 4, except they were now into the final stretch. And Vina decided enough was enough and sacrificed herself, which caused Kil'jaeden to take 25% increased holy damage and stunned him for like 5 seconds. This gave the champions a nice little bit of respite. But it was calm before the storm, because after the stun, Kil'jaeden just went all out, casting bloody everything. 5 Armageddons at any given time, Darkness of 1,000 Souls on a much shorter cooldown, squeaky bum time. However, the champions were ultimately victorious, Kil'jaeden was banished, and the gateway was closed. The world had been spared from the Legion for the millionth time, but not without consequence. The Sunwell was tainted again, and the Blood Elves weren't big fans of the idea of them being engulfed by its corrupted energies like last time. Regent Lord Lorthamar suggested that they would probably need to destroy the thing again, but ultimately it was Velen who provided the Blood Elves with another, better solution. He'd come to the Sunwell to pay his respects to Muru, but the only thing left of the Naru was its heart. Within it, Velen had sensed a glimmer of power and hope. He used the Naru's heart to cleanse the Sunwell and transform the fount into a source of holy light and arcane magic. This had a profound effect on the Blood Elves, particularly the Blood Knights, who decided they'd been a little bit dickish and would no longer take the light by force. From now on, they would ask for the light's blessing. The future was now promising for the Blood Elves for the first time in bloody ages. They no longer needed to look elsewhere to satisfy their cravings for magic. And we're leaving it there! In the next Volume 3 video, I'm talking about the Nether Dragons, as well as a little bit of an update on what Joe Gall has been up to. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, all of that bollocks, and all that's left to say is, thanks for watching, and see ya!